As a 3-1 win sets up a three-horse race for the title, we'll try and find you some value in the outright market, and I'll be springing a rather niche surprise quiz for Sam. Also got some tips for another important week in the Premier League with goals on the menu in a couple of matches at the bottom. All this and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Betting Expert Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Mr. Sam Ingram. How are you feeling, Sam?
Hello, Dan. Yeah, feeling good. Thanks. This is obviously our first ever episode of our new podcast, so welcome to anyone listening. And it's also my first ever podcast, so you're going to need to be a little bit gentle with me, Dan. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm going to ignore that and kick things off with a brief look at the slate for last weekend and Arsenal's 3-1 win over Liverpool, which I think was the biggest match in the Premier League. It's a pretty strange one, I thought, Sam. It was a high-quality game with some pretty low-quality goals, comical goals at times with mistakes from some pretty good defenders on the pitch. What did you think of the match, and where do you think it leaves the two teams?
I think largely Liverpool were outclassed and outfought over the 90 minutes. There were a couple of questionable goals, questionable mistakes for both sides, but Arsenal deserved all 3 points. And those much talked about celebrations after the final whistle underline exactly how the Gunners felt about that result. They believe they've put themselves firmly in a three-horse race for the title. Liverpool were without a few. Szoboszlai felt like a big miss in the midfield with the ground he covers and his tenacity in there. And for me, the jury is out on Ryan Gravenberch and the impact he has on games right now, both offensively and defensively. That could change. Obviously, he's a young lad, but I've not seen too much from him, to be honest, in his time in the Premier League. And I know it couldn't happen on the weekend as Conor Bradley missed the match due to the passing of his father, but I'd rather see Trent in midfield over Gravenberch and Bradley on the right if that wasn't an option. But what was evident for me in this Liverpool side, without Núñez and Salah, is it's one that lacks attacking intent, and I think we saw that here. Although Arsenal played a significant role in that lack of a cutting edge, to be honest, they did kind of rebuff any of Liverpool's advances, especially when they went ahead in the second half. In the middle third, Jorginho conducted proceedings. He looked excellent in there, received the ball in tight situations, played forward, really knitted play together between that Arsenal forward line and the midfield. As did Odegaard and Rice, couldn't fault any of them. And looking at it from defensively from Arsenal's point of view, in the first half you saw Odegaard really push high and pressed almost alongside Havertz in the final third, with Martinelli and Saka kind of harassing and harrying from the wings, and Declan Rice in the middle too. He just didn't stop. Obviously, we know we've got an absolute engine. He was great, and Liverpool just couldn't cope in the first 45 minutes, and they'd have counted themselves, Arsenal, extremely unlucky to actually go in at 1-1. Liverpool didn't have a shot on target in the whole first half, but they didn't let that deflate them. And they went into the second half, they took the lead. And once they did take the lead, they kind of sat in, was really compact, hard to break down. And Liverpool just couldn't get through. And they ended up with just one shot on target in that second half. So one shot on target in the whole game.
Very good at restricting teams, Arsenal. They especially in bigger matches. I think, as you said, they restricted Liverpool to 0 shots on target in the first half. It was a similar story at Anfield. It was a similar story when Arsenal played Manchester City in, I think it was back in October, in a game at the Emirates, which they won 1-0. They nullify opposition attack as well in big matches. I think that's a new string to their bow this year.
It's really impressive as well because they still possess that kind of counter-attacking threat. So not only do they nullify the other team, but once they do win the ball in transitions and on the break, they're really dangerous. I saw Martinelli up against Konate in the first half, and Konate is no slouch. He's really fast.
He's rapid as well.
And Martinelli just left him for dead. So yeah, they got that on either wing, and it was a really impressive performance, to be honest, from Arsenal.
Yeah, it did well. It's affected the odds slightly, the outright odds, perhaps probably not as much as I thought it would. The result is, 6-pointer at the top, but it has changed things, changed the landscape a little bit. City are still the favourites, with Liverpool drifting and Arsenal shortening to win the title. Where would your money go in the title odds at the moment? Is there any value there for people to look at?
Potentially. It's a bit of a boring answer, but I don't think I'd enter the title race now personally. I was steadily topping up on Man City to win the league at around 2.25. A little bit bigger on the exchanges about a month or so ago when they were struggling to win games and money was coming in for both Arsenal and Liverpool. But if I had a tenner and I wanted to get involved on the action for a bit of fun, probably Arsenal on the exchanges at around 7-1. Probably got a bit of juice in it. But in terms of who I think will win the Premier League, it has to be City. If Arsenal had like a leading goal scoring number 9 like City, then maybe I'd feel a little different. The one question mark I have over Man City team, and there's not many of them, is that we're going to likely see them in the final stages of the Champions League once again, and it's not nailed on that they'll be able to balance both European and domestic commitments as they did last season. I think the big fixture, the big meeting that might determine the final stage of the season, it comes in March at the Etihad. Arsenal travel to City. They've got 8 games following that left of the season, so we'll see kind of where both teams are at there, and the winner of that, who knows, may well go on to win the title. But for me, I think if you look at Liverpool as well, I think with a couple of injuries, including to Salah, I don't think they'll quite have enough to compete along with Arsenal. But look, that's no disgrace. Look at what they're competing against. It's very difficult to keep up with this City side.
Yeah. On the outright markets, you say you don't want to get into them too much at the moment, Sam, the title odds. I think it is something that kind of divides bettors, the outright markets. Personally, I love them, especially at the start of the season. You can make some bold predictions. The bolder, the better, as far as I'm concerned. But, we're about halfway through now, and I think we're getting a decent idea of where things are headed, even if the title hasn't been decided. Did you make any outright bets at the start of the season that aren't aging well? I want to just get in and
that aren't aging well.
Stinkers. Yeah, give me a stinker.
Yes, I did. I actually have an absolute howler on my hands, and I keep seeing it in my Bet365 account. It makes me laugh every time. I tweeted it a couple of times too, so I'm really sorry if anyone followed suit. It was Ross Stewart to score 20+ league goals in the Championship. Looking at his stats, he has scored 0. He's played 25 minutes in the Championship this season, split between 2 games in November. It is the worst anti-post selection I've ever made, I think. And he was injured at the start of the season. The club said he was due back late October, early November, and he did come back, and he got injured again. And yeah, I mean, it turns out that it was the worst bet of all time. So
all time yet. All time so far.
So far, yeah. There's going to be a few more, I can imagine.
I'm sure there will. For me, I honestly can't decide which is worse. I've got a couple. I always do an outright bet for every single team in the Premier League at the start of the season, which lends itself well to a few howlers. But yeah, for me, I can't decide which is looking worse at the moment. It's either going to be Wolves to get relegated as they sit in 10th, very comfortably in mid-table, or it's going to be Burnley to finish top half as they sit 19th on 13 points. I mean, if they were around, it would look pretty good. But
I can't say too much, but that's not great.
Well, at least they're playing more than 25 minutes. So
yeah,
let's just to balance things out, give me some of your best outright bets, just so it's not all bad, just for this season.
My best this season is probably Leicester and Southampton in a 1-2 finish. That was 20-1 on Sky Bet. At the start of the season, I really like the chances of that happening. Southampton are on a great run. I also put together an anti-post article for Betting Expert at the start of the season, looking at the EFL, and that's going really well. I'm not going to count my chickens just yet, but if we look at, we got Sheffield Wednesday to be relegated, second from bottom. That was 4-1. Southampton top 6 evens. Adam Armstrong top Championship goal scorer each way at 20-1. He's 1 goal behind Whittaker and Sammy Szmodic. Bolton top 6 at evens, and Leicester top Midlands Championship side at 1.90. So if the season finished now, they would all pay out. But like I said, I won't count my chickens, especially in the EFL. Like, anything could happen. So yeah, we'll see.
I was on that Southampton bet as well, so that was a good little punt from you. For me, I had a few of the Premier League, which I think are looking good. I had Sheffield United to finish bottom, which I think they're pretty comfortably the worst side in the Premier League at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I was really down on Newcastle at the start of the season. I remember having a bit of a rant at you back in July time, I think it was, spouting a load of nonsense about how Newcastle were going to finish 8th or 9th and Eddie Howe's going to get sacked. Must have sounded like a conspiracy theorist, but it's looking pretty good at the moment. I've actually got them to finish under on points. I think the line was quite high, so yeah, it's looking pretty good at the moment. Now we're going to take a look at Sam's picks for this coming weekend, and I'm not going to be restricting him to any league or country here. It's just wherever Sam has found some betting value to bring to you. However, we are sticking with the Premier League for this week with it's quite rare for you, I think, Sam, just to only bet on the Premier League. You like your EFL punts every now and then. So let's kick things off with the battle of the newly promoted sides and your pick for Luton versus Sheffield United on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm usually knocking around League 2 or something, so this is a little different. It's going to be over 2.75 Asian goals in Luton versus Sheffield United. There's 1.80 currently available on over 2.5 goals at William Hill, so I'd recommend that if you can get on it. But for the purpose of the pod, yeah, over 2.75 on the Asian line at Bet365. Look, it's simple. All we need is Luton to score another 4 goals, Dan, and it's job done.
Low expectations from you.
It's 7-1 for Luton to get another 4. I probably wouldn't recommend jumping on that, but you never know. They've done it in 2 consecutive games. Would you like to have a guess at the year in which the last newly promoted top flight side scored 4+ goals in 3 games in a row?
When people ask something like this, I don't like to overestimate in case it makes the answer look bad. So I'm just going to say 2012.
1977.
Oh, wow.
It was Sunderland. I knew you wouldn't get that. I'm not sure why I asked, to be honest. But yeah, Luton have done so in their previous 2 games, scored 4 goals against sides that qualified for Europe last year in Brighton and Newcastle, and they were good value for it. Beat the pair on underlying expected goals numbers in both. We saw Adebayo on fire en route to his hat-trick against Brighton, and then the Ogbene show up against Dan Burn, causing all sorts of problems for the converted left-back at St James's Park. They now face a Sheffield United side that has conceded 59 goals in 23 matches. The last team to concede 60 in 24 games were Ipswich Town in 1963. So if you consider that Luton have scored in the last 10 games on the bounce, at stretch you probably wouldn't have foreseen before the season kicked off, then you wouldn't be surprised to see Sheffield United match that unwanted Ipswich run in the 60s. 7 of Luton's 11 home games at the Kenny have paid out for over 2.5 goals, including 5 of the last 7. The last month or so has been pretty remarkable in terms of goals scored for both clubs and conceded, and I don't see too many reasons why that's going to dry up on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, these two both average nearly 3.5 total goals per match, which is well above the league average. I think the concern here for me is that both sides kind of shut up shop a little bit, considering how tight things are at the bottom. Maybe the sort of fear of not losing overtakes a desire to win. Is that coming into your thinking at all, Sam?
Yeah, maybe that's the other side of the coin, isn't it? We've seen it happen before, but maybe the question we should be asking in that respect is, like, can you see either of these teams keeping a clean sheet? I'm not sure I can. Maybe Luton, but especially Sheffield United, like you'd expect Luton to bag. And on that thinking, if we do see a Luton Town goal, then the Blades simply have to throw everything they've got at a Luton defence in an attempt to leave Kenilworth Road with a share of the spoils to save their season, pretty much. You mentioned the per 90 averages nearing 3.5 for both teams. That shouldn't be overlooked. And And since the recent head-to-head on Boxing Day, which was Chris Wilder's 5th game in charge, the Blades' matches have been chaotic. Wilder clearly wants his team to take the game to sides when possible, and that's highlighted in the results. They've overseen a 3-2 in the reverse of this fixture, 2-0 up against Man City, 4-0 against Gillingham, 2-2 against West Ham, 5-2 Brighton, 3-2 Palace, and 5-0 Villa. So no team has conceded more goals than Sheffield United's 20 in the period following Wilder's appointment in Sheffield. We might not get another 5 or 6 goals, but I think the odds are in our favour in terms of hoping for 3 or more goals to return a profit.
Yeah, definitely agree with you here. Another possible angle in, which I've just seen as well, is Luton have the second lowest half-time goals tally in the Premier League in terms of their total goals, so maybe second half goals could be a way in as well. This bet over 2.75 goals is coming in at 2.03 on Bet365. Betsy, our internal projection model, has the line at 2.93. So a little higher than the size averages, but well above the bookmakers line. So definitely some value in there according to our internal projections. So I'm going to take things in a different direction here. And as I said at the start of the show, Sam, there's going to be a surprise quiz dropped on you. You have absolutely no knowledge of what's to come here, do you?
I don't like the sound of that, to be honest. But yeah, go on. Crack on.
So I just really wanted to show our listeners how much value there can be in these outright markets. So at the start of the season, bookmakers will often put out expected points totals for each team and offer over-unders on them. So they could say Manchester City to finish with 87 points, and they'll offer over 88 and under 86. And they'll probably do a 86 to 88 range with higher odds. So in that instance, I've taken 87 as the average. It's a good market. I've always liked them. I think there's plenty of value to be found. It's always some that completely outperform and underperform. So for this quiz, I'm going to give you Bet365's expected points total for a Premier League team from way back at the start of this season, back in August. I'm then going to give you that same team's projected points total according to the latest Betsy data. So what the bookmakers' expectations were at the start of the season and what our expectations are at the end of the season. Now we're kind of half, 2/3 of the way through the campaign. All you need to do is tell me which team I'm talking about.
Okay.
Okay. Not much confidence in the reply.
No, not a lot at all.
I'll just give you an example. I'll say the bookmakers' expected points line from the start of the season was 78. The Betsy projected line is 82.1. Which team am I talking about?
One of 3, maybe. Liverpool.
Not far off. Arsenal. So I just took first alphabetically 78 to 82.1. Yeah. So I'm going to give you 3 here. 3 questions. I can do 19, and to be honest, we're recording next week, and I'm probably not going to think of a better quiz, so I'm going to hold back a few until next week. So, first question. Bet365 points total at the start of the season was 75. Projected line for the end of the season, according to Betsy, is 54.9. So, a 20.1 point drop-off.
That is a big drop-off. Instantly, I'm thinking Newcastle.
It's Manchester United.
What was their expected from Bet365?
75. Down
75?
54.9. Yeah, it's a
bit optimistic, wasn't it?
A little bit. I think it was based on their success last season, I think, more than anything. Right. And yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Question 2. Bet365 expected points was 57. Our Betsy projections are 69.8. So 12.8 better off. So 57 to 69.8.
I'm thinking either Tottenham or Villa. Can I have 2 guesses or
no?
Villa.
Spot on.
Nice.
Well done.
All right.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, probably could have deduced that from the slightly lower tally. Start the season 57, kind of upper mid-table, going to upper mid-table for Villa. Last one, just to keep you on your toes. Bet365 points total was 44. And Betsy projections are 45.9. So 44 to 45.9.
Okay, so that's comfortable-ish. Missing out on relegation, I think.
Yep.
Everton.
Everton is incorrect. It's Fulham.
Fulham.
They're probably
That was a
most
tough one.
consistent. Yeah, that was a tough one. I thought it'd give you a really difficult one to finish off. Kind of pretty much where they were expected to be. Fulham just a little bit slightly better off, I think, than some expected. So I think that's quite fair. Great. So before we go into the fine details of your final tip of the day, which looks at Wolves versus Brentford in the Premier League, I think I want to have a bit of a discussion on Brentford. It's a side that have a lot of people worried at the moment. They've slid down the table, 3 points off the drop zone. I think it's 7 defeats in their last 8 in the league. They're still out at 9.0 to go down in the relegation odds. So what do you think of that market at the moment, the relegation odds for the Premier League? Is there anything catching your eye, any potential value sources?
It is an interesting one because there are so many teams, whether they like it or not, like firmly in that relegation battle. I think in terms of Brentford, with Tony back, it's huge for Brentford. And with players to return, I think they should have enough to avoid relegation. I could understand why people would want to back them at said prices, just 3 points off the drop, I think they are. But I feel they'll pick up more points than those below them. Looking at the relegation prices in front of me, Palace at 6-1 catches the eye. They've won 4 games in 3 months. Eze, Gehi, Doucouré are injured. Elise's out for 2 months. I think that's their 4 best players. Joachim Andersen may have something to say about that, but it's 4 of their best players. Eze and Elise, they are in the top 5 in the Premier League for shots per 90, behind Nunes, Haaland and Richarlison. So that shows exactly what they offer to this Palace team in forward areas. I don't think it's outrageous to say they're in a relegation battle in their current shape. They are 5 points ahead of Everton in the final relegation place. Roy Hodgson's time has probably run its course. Large sections of the fan base want him gone. Just looking at social media and looking on as a neutral, I wouldn't be surprised if Steve Parris is actively seeking a replacement in case this season gets any worse. Now, I'm not sure I'd be rushing to back it personally. There's a few clubs down there, as I've said, Everton, Luton, Forest, Brentford, who might be sucked into it, which makes picking the right horse difficult. I also think that Roy Hodgson is the most likely manager to go, and maybe the only manager to be sacked from that cohort of teams, unless the Forest owner gets itchy feet. And we've seen what effect changing managers can have on results and ultimately avoiding relegation. Roy Hodgson came in last season and kept them up at a canter. They had their best players available then, so it's a bit different. But this is still a variable that you've got to consider, and for me, it's one that's a little off-putting.
Yeah, I quite like the Palace shout. They are sliding. I think a lot of these teams, kind of lower mid-table teams, Everton, Palace, Brentford, Fulham, they've benefited from the newly promoted teams, which are of a much lower quality than we've seen in the last 4 or 5 seasons. Sheffield United, Burnley are almost nailed on to occupy 2 of those spots. Many people had Luton, but they've found a bit of form. We'll see how that goes in the next couple of weeks. So on to the match, Wolves versus Brentford, which I think will be a big one at the bottom, even if Wolves are comfortably out of the mix. You've gone for the same tip again to your previous one at some very similar odds.
Yeah, same bet again, same odds pretty much. It's evens here for over 2.75 Asian goals. So we need 3 goals for half profit returns and 4 goals for full profits. looking at the game, yeah, look, I love Gary O'Neill. I think he's great. He has an infectious enthusiasm for the game, one he's clearly obsessive about. We saw on Monday Night Football earlier on in the season exactly what he's like, and I'm not surprised that this current Wolves crop have taken to him as they have, and they are in turn producing the level of performances and positive results we're now seeing. Hwang Hee-chan left for the Asian Cup about a month ago, and it threatened to leave a gaping hole in the Wolves' attack. But with Neto and Cunha combining as they are, they've not really missed him, which says a lot because he was in some really, really good form before he left. In the previous fixture between these two, Hwang scored a brace. That was the day after Boxing Day on the 27th, and that finished 4-1 to Wolves, who were away from home. Both teams recorded more than 2.2 XG in that game, and that was their most recent Premier League fixture, and their most recent fixture was in the FA Cup replay, and that finished 3-2 after extra time, 2-2 after 90 minutes. So this is a fixture that has goals in it. And looking at Wolves specifically, they've scored in each of their last 18 Premier League home games since a 1-0 loss to Bournemouth last February, so a year. And they've not put a run together like this in nearly 25 years. So Gary O'Neill clearly having an effect on this Wolves team. In the away corner, no team finds themselves on a longer streak without a clean sheet in the Premier League than Brentford. They've conceded in each of their last 12 games in the competition, conceding 2 or more goals in each of their last 6. So, like Luton and Sheffield United, goals has to be the way in here for me at a pretty good price on a pretty good goal line.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's a good goal line. My only real worry is Brentford's attacking ability, attacking potency. Tony's back, but I think without Mbeumo and Wissa, they don't look as capable of stretching teams. I think they're a little bit one-dimensional, not creating as many chances. But it's a good bet. I do agree with it. I think Betsy has the line at 3.05, so definitely on your side again. I think these goal lines are a little bit low for the 2 matches. And if you put these 2 as a double on Bet365, it's coming in at odds of 4.06, which I think looks pretty good value. If you're happy with that.
Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have the injured lads back for Brentford and Mbeumo and Wissa, but what we've got up top at the minute is not a bad alternative. Much has been made about Tony's return, and it is justified. In his 3 games following his ban, he scored 2, and he played a crucial role in Neil Maupay's finish against City on Monday. So I think, we'd like Mbeumo and Wissa knocking about the team, but it's not a bad alternative to have.
Yeah, definitely. It's good timing, I think, with the other injuries and unavailabilities. So, yeah, let's wrap it up there. Thanks as always to Sam Ingram.
Thank you very much.
And thanks very much to everyone who's listened along. If you are going to be following our tips from today's show, then please gamble safely. Only bet what you're willing to lose. We'll be back next week with some more predictions for whichever matches we want to go for. And see you again next week.